Society of International Law, welcome you all to the 18th V.K. Krishna Menon Memorial Lecture by Honorable Mr. Justice Umesh Lalit, Judge Supreme Court of India. It is with great honor and privilege I welcome the dignitaries on the dais, starting with Honorable Mr. Justice Umesh Lalit, Judge Supreme Court of India, Shri Praveen H. Parekh, President, the Indian Society of International Law, Dr. G.V. Rao, Vice President, the Indian Society of International Law, and Dr. Shikhar Ranjan, Acting Secretary General, the Indian Society of International Law. I would request the dignitaries to please pay their respect to late V.K. Krishna Menon by offering Pushpmala on the photo of Shri V.K. Krishna Menon. Thank you, sir. I would request our President, Shri Praveen H. Parekh, sir, to felicitate Honorable Justice Umesh Lalit, sir. I would also request our Vice President, Dr. G.V. Rao, to also present a shawl to Justice. And our Acting Secretary General, Dr. Shikhar Ranjan, to present a small token of appreciation in the form of publications of the Indian Society of International Law. Thank you so much, sir. With these words, I would like to welcome Dr. G.V. Rao, Vice President of Indian Society of International Law, to give his welcome address.
Good evening. Shri P.H. Parekh, President ISIL, esteemed members of the Executive Council of the ISIL, the audience present here and others witnessing the live streaming pan-India and worldwide through YouTube Live. I have the proud privilege and honor of welcoming Justice Umesh Lalit, our senior colleague from the bar, who was the 6th senior advocate to be directly elevated to the Supreme Court of India. Justice Lalit had joined the bar in June 1983 and started practicing in the Supreme Court of India in 1986. From 1986 to 1992, he worked with former Attorney General for India, late Shri Soli J. Sorabji. On 29th April 2004, he was designated as a senior advocate of the Supreme Court of India. In 2011, a Supreme Court bench of Justices G.S. Sanghvi and A.K. Ganguly appointed Shri Lalit as Special Public Prosecutor for the Central Bureau of Investigation in the 2G spectrum cases, stating that in the interest of fair prosecution of the case, appointment of Shri U.U. Lalit is eminently suitable. It is well known that Shri Lalit appeared in several high-profile criminal cases and that his clients were high-profile public figures, corporates, film stars, and all. In August 2014, Press Trust of India news report stated that he had a high reputation for his preparation, patience, and sober demeanor while arguing the cases. Justice Lalit was a part of the two-judge bench that upheld the Travancore royal family's right to administer the Sri Padmanabha Swami temple on 13 July 2020. Besides this, there are numerous other important judgments which he has been a part of and delivered. Justice Lalit belongs to an illustrious family. His father, Justice U.R. Lalit, was a retired judge of the Bombay High Court. He is set to become the 49th Chief Justice of India on August 27th, 2022, and the second one directly elevated from the bar after the famed Chief Justice S.M. Sikri. We are indeed thankful and honored that Justice Lalit has kindly consented to deliver the 18th Krishna Menon Memorial Lecture. I would like to quickly say a few words on Sri V.K. Krishna Menon, whom I had the good fortune to visit as a small boy along with my late father, Dr. G.V.G. Krishnamurthy, who was former Election Commissioner of India and the co-founder of ISIL, along with other greats like Sri Krishna Menon, Dr. Nagendra Singh, who was judge of the ICJ, Sri M.K. Nawaz, Sri K. Krishna Rao. Sri Krishna Menon, who entrusted the task to my esteemed father and of building this plot of land here was allotted by the then PM to Sri Krishna Menon, who entrusted the task to my esteemed father, and the same was done while he was Joint Secretary in the Ministry of Law and Justice and Secretary General of the ISIL. I'm also personally grateful to Sri Krishna Menon for having asked General B.M. Kaul of the China War fame to grant admission to me and my sister to Army Public School, Dholakua, Delhi, where we completed our entire schooling. This building was named after Krishna Menon, and I would like to hail him and have him remembered as the father of the international law and foreign policy of India. Krishna Menon was a lawyer basically, and everything else later. He studied at the Madras Law College and went up to the Middle Temple in London and was called to be a barrister. He wrote the first draft of the preamble to the Constitution of India and also initiated the idea of the Constituent Assembly of India. He was also the architect and the person who coined the name the Non-Aligned Movement. He was India's first High Commissioner to UK post-independence. He was chairman of the Indian delegation to the United Nations General Assembly from 1953 to 1962 and at sessions of the UN Trusteeship Council from 53 to 56 and to the 18 Nation Committee on Disarmament. Menon as an envoy had successfully negotiated conflicts and diplomatic rivalries involving the US, China, Korea and other countries. With his tall-built, hard-chiseled features and hawk-like gaze, and it had made him hard to miss in any crowd. He was widely networked and had a knack for striking up new ties among diplomats, celebrities and heads of states worldwide. Driven, hardworking and ambitious, Menon often neglected his health to hop across continents in those days, leaving his footprint on one issue after the other as a top-notch diplomat. Featured in the 1950s across American and European dailies, magazines, and invited to radio and TV chat shows, and was featured as the Time magazine cover. Menon, according to a former Indian President R. Venkatraman, who was a delegate to the UN himself, stated, he was like a seismograph in the United Nations, vibrating to every fluctuation in world affairs and registering India's reactions to each of them. There was such a thing as a Menon scale, which, like the Richter scale, recorded vibrations of different intensity depending on the gravity of the tremor. About his marathon 8-hour speech in Kashmir in UN Security Council for over 2 days in February of 1957, at the end of which he fainted, and his friend and Filipino statesman Carlos Romulo said, we took him to the room next to the Security Council, giving him smelling salts. I said, Krishna, you have just won the Oscar Award. Menon was also responsible for masterminding solutions to the world's most complex problems like peace plan for Korea, the Indochina ceasefire, and the French pullout from the United Nations over Algeria. V.K. Krishna Menon emerged as an engineer and an architect of India's foreign policy, and more so of the non-aligned movement, the most important development of international affairs those days. He, having headed India's diplomatic missions to the United Kingdom and the United Nations, distinguished himself in the world of diplomacy, international law and foreign policy. By defending India's rights to Kashmir, he earned the widespread popularity and sobriquet Hero of Kashmir. Thank you very much for patient hearing. I'm very glad so many of you are present in large numbers, and as I say, I would like him to be remembered as the father of India's international law and foreign policy of India. I hope that tribute can be carried forward by all of you. Thank you very much. Uh, as I conclude, I would like both my father and Krishna Menon were fond of gifting pens, which he learned from Krishna Menon himself, my father. And he passed away last year. So in his memory, we have got some pens which has an inscription. I would like to gift one to our chief guest, Justice U. Lalit, and one to the president. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. I would now request our President, Shri Praveen H. Parekh, sir, to give his presidential address.
Honorable Mr. Justice Umesh Lalit, Senior Most Judge of Supreme Court, Mr. G.V. Rao, Vice President of ISIL, Mr. Shikhar Ranjan, Secretary General ISIL, Mr. Pradeep Rai, the President of the Supreme Court Bar Association, my members of the Executive Committee of ISIL, family members of ISIL, members of the bar, academicians, dear students, ladies and gentlemen. I feel immensely honored at the opportunity to address this memorial event held in remembrance of Mr. V.K. Krishna Menon. I'll mention Mr. Menon, who thought of establishing Indian Society of International Law, in which we are sitting today, in 1959. He was a formidable figure in the field of international relations and diplomacy. Born on 3rd May 1896, Mr. Menon did his BSc as well as MSc from London School of Economics. He became an ardent socialist and served as a member of Labour Party in London from 1934 to 1947. He joined the Commonwealth of India League in London. He was made the Joint Secretary of the Commonwealth of India League in 1928, and he contributed a lot in transforming the organizations into India League with Indian self-rule as its goal. Mr. Menon played a significant and pivotal role in advocating for India's freedom in the United Kingdom by facilitating the decade-long negotiations between the Indian National Congress and the Labour Party in London. With the coming of Indian independence on 15th August 1947, Mr. Menon was appointed as the High Commissioner of India in UK. Mr. Menon was effectively made him the leader of the Indian diplomatic missions to the United Kingdom. He was also the chairman of the delegation of India at the United Nations General Assembly from 1953 to 1962. Mr. Menon was elected as a member of Rajya Sabha in 1953. In 1956, he was appointed as a minister without portfolio, since portfolio was too small for a document to capture the magnanimity of late Mr. Menon. He took over as the Minister of Defense in 1957 to 1962. He was a member of the Lok Sabha from 1957 to 1967, and again from 1969 to 1970. In 1957, during the United Nations Security Council meeting, Mr. Menon delivered the statements about the India-Pakistan dispute concerning Kashmir. It is the longest speech of 8 hours in the history of the United Nations Security Council. We are extremely happy that Honorable Mr. Justice Umesh Lalit, the senior most judge of the Supreme Court of India, has accepted the invitation to deliver the 18th V.K. Krishna Menon Memorial Lecture. Justice Lalit has been in the world of law for a long time. His father, Justice U.R. Lalit, was a judge of High Court of Bombay, and after retirement, Justice practiced as a senior counsel in the Supreme Court. He remains respected in the Supreme Court by the bar, bench, and the litigants. I had the privilege of briefing his father, Justice U.R. Lalit, when I was an advocate on record. I remember in those days, we used to classify the senior counsel into various categories. Number 1, who do not read the brief at all. Number 2, who read the brief thoroughly. Number 3, who read the brief partly. But Mr. Lalit, Justice Lalit, his father was always fully ready with all the matters all the time. Honorable Justice Uday Lalit joined the bar in 1983 and practiced in Bombay High Court till 1985. He started practicing in Supreme Court in 1986 and joined the chamber of great Mr. Soli Sorabji, the former Attorney General for India. Very soon, Justice Lalit became a successful counsel in the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court also assigned him to assist in the Supreme Court Legal Service Committees for 2 terms. Ladies and gentlemen, from 1950 till today, 258 judges have been appointed by the President of India to the Supreme Court. Out of 258, only 9 Supreme Court judges have been appointed directly from the bar. On 13th August 2014, Justice U. Lalit became the 6th senior advocate to have been directly elected from the bar to the position of the Supreme Court judge. In June 2021, the President of India was pleased to nominate Justice Lalit to the position of the Executive Chairperson of the National Legal Services Authorities, NALSA. This organization looks after the litigants who cannot afford the fees of the lawyers. If I start giving all important judgments delivered by Justice Lalit, you will have to with me for few days. But I would like to mention very few judgments delivered by Justice Lalit. In case of Amardeep Singh versus Harvind Kaur, in 2017 it was held that the prescribed 6 months waiting period for divorce by mutual consent is not mandatory. Justice Lalit was also on the Constitution bench in the case of Saharia Bano, that negated the validity of triple talaq and held the triple talaq violated the fundamental right guaranteed by Article 14. In Anukhila versus State of Madhya Pradesh, Justice Lalit has laid down that where death sentence could be one of the alternative punishments, the courts must be completely vigilant and see that full opportunity at every stage is afforded to the accused. And another judgment in the case of Maratha Burma, wherein Justice Lalit upheld the rights of the Travancore royal family in the administration of Sri Padma Swami temple in Kerala's Tiruchiram. ISIL has upheld the significance of international law, especially through its publications and research endeavors. This would not have been possible but for the hard work put in by exceptionally eminent founders such as Mr. Menon and Justice Nagendra Singh. ISIL is now 63 years young. Throughout its countless years of service, the ISIL has benefited from the guidance and support of many judges, present and former of Supreme Court and various high courts, and large number of academicians and professors. In fact, I am very happy that he is one organization where you have got the lawyers, you have the professors, and academicians, where various people are together, and that makes it ISIL a great institution. I am very happy that Mr. G.V. Rao, our Vice President, and Mr. Shikhar Ranjan, our Acting Secretary General, are going to address to this today. Mr. Venkat Rao is one of the Vice President of the ISIL. He is a designated senior advocate by the Supreme Court. He looks young, but he has been practicing for 35 years. Sri Shikhar Ranjan holds the position of Acting Secretary General in ISIL. He has been associated with the Indian Society of International Law since the year 2000. The members of the Executive Committee of the ISIL are very active and are doing a lot of work. I would like to recognize and appreciate their contribution in organizing this function. At the end, ladies and gentlemen, all of you definitely know that I am an eminent astrologer. I therefore inform you that on 27th August 2022, our Rashtrapati ji will administer the oath of the Chief Justice of India to Justice Umesh Lalit. Thanks a million.
Thank you so much, sir, for the presidential address. Now it is my great honor to invite Honorable Mr. Justice Umesh Lalit, Judge Supreme Court of India, to deliver the 18th V.K. Krishna Menon Memorial Lecture. Welcome, sir.
Mr. P.H. Parekh, President of this Indian Society for International Law, Mr. G.V. Rao, Lalit Senior Advocate, and Mr. Shikhar Ranjan, all the other dignitaries who are present here, members of the bar, members of this society, young advocates, interns, ladies and gentlemen. A minor correction or an addition first. You heard all of them say something about me. But one fact which was missed was before joining Mr. Sorabji's chamber, I was Mr. Parekh's junior. And I did not expect it from Mr. Parekh. Don't disown me, sir. Okay. Now, coming back to the topic, a giant personality, a great mind, an intellectual, a towering presence wherever he went, Krishna Menon. You have heard all the details, all the sort of salient features. One of the major credits to that man is that he was first person who thought of drafting a preamble to the Constitution. That sums up the enormous contribution that the man was capable of doing that. It is our misfortune that he was not associated with the framing of India's constitution, because by that time he was on an assignment in London representing India's interest as High Commissioner there. That's one. Second, his 8-hour-long continuous debate to engage the entire Security Council on that issue of Kashmir between two states, that's India and Pakistan. That's again a memorable achievement. But coming back home, since I have been trained as a lawyer, so therefore I look at the matter from the perspective of a lawyer and a person who is a student of law. 3 judgments. You'll find Krishna Menon, of course he was a barrister called to the bar from Lincoln's Inn. He was before that student of London School of Economics. It's a very illustrious career. He could have been a great member at the bar, could have gone places if he was not a career diplomat, or rather a non-career diplomat, sorry. Some of the judgments, which are 1964 to 1970, and you'll find common feature that he represented various interests. 3 judgments which are striking judgments, 2 9-judge combination judgments, and 1 last, which was Nambudripad, which is a bench of 3 judges. Before coming to those judgments, let me just share one anecdote. Our family friend Dr. N.M. Ghatate, who used to practice in Supreme Court, was the junior of Mr. V.K. Krishna Menon. So I had once asked him, because Ghatate did his doctorate from an American university in international law. I said, what did you find in Krishna Menon to be his chamber junior? because he was not an established counsel as such. He said, in my student days, when I was doing my research for my doctorate in international law, I had come down to India and visited various personalities. One of them was Krishna Menon. And I was drawn to that man by the sheer force of his intellect. He may not have been an established counsel, but that intelligence, that intellect drew me towards him. And he said that I had decided that if I practice as a lawyer, I will be working with Mr. Krishna Menon. So that's one part. That's just to give you an insight as to the capacity of that man. His judgments also show the appearance. People who normally appeared before with him were Mr. R.K. Garg, M.K. Ramamurthy, and S.C. Agarwala. That was the combination which had appeared in various important matters. That gives you now the background. Now, 3 judgments. The first one, which is a 9-judge combination, was in the case of State Trading Corporation. He was appearing for, there were various petitioners. The lead arguments were, of course, by Mr. M.C. Settleward, but Krishna Menon's contribution is also something which was very, very noteworthy. The issues were that whether a company incorporated under the provisions of Indian Companies Act, which is a legal person, whether such legal person can claim the rights which are available to a citizen under Part 3 of the Constitution. And second, State Trading Corporation being a government company, fully owned government company, whether such a government company could maintain an action for its violation of alleged fundamental rights under Part 3 against Union of India. That's its own creator. So these 2 issues were there, very interesting issues, excellent debate and excellent discussion. Time is very short here to be entering into that because I need to focus on something else. So therefore this was only a preparatory kind of, idea to be sort of brought before you. What happens is, the concurring judgment by Justice Hidayatullah. And Hidayatullah and Krishna Menon seem to be having some kind of, preordained kind of situations where they keep exchanging notes on every single occasion. And one of the comments which Justice Hidayatullah puts in his judgment about Krishna Menon is this, and I'll just read out. As Mr. Menon rightly pointed out, ships and aircraft also possess nationality in international law, but it cannot be claimed that they possess citizenship in municipal law. Now the statement is absolutely correct, but Hidayatullah keeps, referring to Mr. Menon's submissions. Why is it so? Perhaps that fascination for that personality of Krishna Menon who appeared before Hidayatullah was so magnetic that Justice Hidayatullah couldn't resist himself from commenting on every submission that was made. Now it is true that aircraft and vessels who carry the national flag, by the international law principles, you are well aware that if a crime is committed on such vessel or aircraft, the criminal jurisprudence of the country whose flags the aircraft or the vessel is flying has an extended jurisdiction. So therefore, he says that Yes, aircrafts and vessels have a nationality in international law, but not in municipal law. Very beautiful statement, yes. This was the first case, which was 9 judges case. The second one is Naresh Meraskar. Again a 9 judge bench combination. Naresh Meraskar was a case where, in connection with something which had appeared in one of the periodicals running in Bombay, Blitz, Rusi Karanjia and others, some proceedings were taken before the High Court of Bombay, and a single judge of the High Court passed certain directions. That single judge that time was Justice Tarkunde. So he passed certain directions. And a writ petition was filed challenging those directions. So the basic issue was whether Article 32 petition can lie challenging a judicial order. So 9 judges combination, Krishna Menon again, appearing for the petitioners. They rejected the submissions that such a petition would not be maintainable. But leave aside that, for us, the contribution of Krishna Menon is something that we are looking for. And I was told by Mr. Gatate that very innovative submissions were advanced by Mr. Krishna Menon. Of course, the judgment doesn't categorically say that Mr. Menon advanced this, etc. But a very landmark judgment and a 9 judge combination. Now imagine for a person who was not a regular and established counsel in Supreme Court to be appearing in 64 in 2 judgments which are 9 judge combinations and being entrusted to appear as a task for the petitioner was itself a great achievement and an acknowledgement for the prowess and for the capacity of that man. But the real talent of this man came to the fore in subsequent judgment, which is a 3 judge combination, which was in EMS Namboodiripad case. Namboodiripad then was a chief minister in Kerala. And in one of the articles which was attributed to Namboodiripad, that is, it was not an article, it was a speech which he had given, which was reduced to writing and published in next day's newspapers. But the statements were attributed to Mr. Namboodiripad. Namboodiripad said something about, Namboodiripad was a person who was driven by the Marxist ideology. He considered Karl Marx to be the person, the communist. And therefore he said, and those 2 sentences, if I may just quote them straight away. The sentences were that according to communist ideology, judiciary is an instrument of oppression, and judges are guided by class hatred, class interests, and class prejudices. Now these statements appeared in the newspaper next day, and an advocate initiated contempt proceedings for scandalizing the court and the judiciary. The bench comprised of 3 judges. The majority found him guilty. The minority, which was K.K. Mathew, Justice K.K. Mathew, held in favor of Namboodiripad and said that's the ideology of a person. He is not saying something as a scandalizing the institution as judiciary. So therefore that was the minority view. Having lost the matter and having been found guilty of contempt, Namboodiripad was here in Supreme Court before a bench headed by Justice Hidayatullah again. And Krishna Menon appeared for Namboodiripad. And if you see the judgment, the paragraph after paragraph deals with the defense which was taken that whatever I said is nothing but Marxist or communist philosophy. So Justice Hidayatullah goes into every part and says that perhaps this defense is not clear, this is not correct, this is not correct. And the submissions were rejected. Namboodiripad naturally was found guilty, his guilt was affirmed. And again, Dr. Ghatate in one of his articles says, after the matter, Hidayatullah remarked in open court, Mr. Menon, because of this case and your arguments, I have studied communism, which I had never thought that I would ever be required to study. So that's again the power of that, the man's arguments. That in order to dispel that, in order to deal with those submissions, the judge was compelled to study, go into the matter deeper and deeper. That's the persona of Krishna Menon. Whether you lose or win a matter is not the point. You lose some, you win some. It's the contribution that you make for the development of law. Even if it's a losing battle, even a losing ship can be commanded by the captain in a very dignified way. And that's what Krishna Menon did in Namboodiripad matter. These are three cases which, according to me, bring to surface what Krishna Menon as a lawyer was. Krishna Menon as a diplomat, we know two previous speakers have touched upon that issue. Krishna Menon as a civil servant in the sense when he was the High Commissioner or a public servant. His contribution to see that Indian cause doesn't get represented in a slipshod way. And that slipshod way is what? The man was on his feet for 8 hours. That shows the commitment. That shows the commitment for public cause. Not just somebody who has studied law, not just somebody who is well versed in world affairs or public affairs. That grit of a man, that determination is something which is noteworthy. And it is that grit which actually makes him stand out. Again, the same foresight of a man in thinking of drafting a preamble. If you go through the Constituent Assembly debates, the preamble was not the matter which was discussed right in the beginning. But here was a man who in 1946 and 47 thought of drafting out a preamble, which is the window to the Constitution. It is these sterling qualities which made that man. Now in the end, let me confess one thing. Just as Justice Hidayatullah said that this case has made me study communism, this lecture has made me study Krishna Menon. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Your Lordship, for delivering the 18th VK Krishna Menon Memorial Lecture and apprising us with some unknown, lesser known contributions and stories of Shri VK Krishna Menon in the field of law. And we all feel very enlightened and lucky to hear from you, sir. And now I request our Acting Secretary General, Dr. Shikhar Ranjan, to give his vote of thanks.
Namaskar and very good evening to all the respected dignitaries, distinguished participants, my dear colleagues, staff and students. It is my proud privilege and honor to extend a formal vote of thanks on behalf of the President and members of the Executive Council of the Indian Society of International Law to all present here, as also those who have joined us virtually for this 18th VK Krishna Menon Memorial Lecture. First and foremost, I would like to convey my sincere gratitude to my Lord Justice Lalit for his brilliant 18th VK Krishna Menon Memorial Lecture. Sir, you took us through the extraordinary legal acumen of the great VK Krishna Menon, in whose memory we are all gathered here, and it was his vision that led to the foundation of this society for dissemination and promotion of international law in India. Justice Lalit is a very respected figure both in bar and bench, and his vision in enhancing justice, access to justice for all, is remarkable. Sir, may I also take this opportunity to remind you of one of your Lordship's judgment delivered on 20th August 2015 in Royal Medical Trust case relating to permissions and approval regime for the medical colleges. And it was this judgment that set out the parameters for both the regulator and regulated. The norms were laid down by you in how MCI and the central government should discharge their duties in giving permission. I can confidently assert, sir, that it was this judgment that guided the MCI subsequent to its delivery in its administrative decision making, and it helped us in getting these decisions upheld in high courts and Supreme Court. Thank you very much, sir. Now I take this opportunity to thank our respected President, Shri Praveen H. Parekh. His vision and leadership enables us to frequently organize such events that brings the bar, bench, academia, and law students together. His indomitable energy and enthusiasm in all spheres of life and work is inspiring for all of us. For the benefit of ISIL's nationwide membership and law students throughout the country, Shri Parekh readily agreed to get this event live streamed on YouTube. In addition to those present here, this program is being watched. My colleagues have just informed me by more than 500 people across the globe. My warm regards and thanks to Mr. Dr. G.V. Rao, Vice President ISIL, for his insightful welcome address, his narration of the life and times of V.K. Krishna Menon, as also highlighting his contribution in nurturing this society was prolific. Likewise, he gave us all an understanding of Justice Lalit's life and work in his address. I thank all the distinguished members of the audience who took out time from the busy schedule to be with us this evening for hearing the erudite lecture by Justice Lalit. Sir, I would also take this opportunity with the permission of the President of ISIL to request Justice Lalit, if you can, sir, kindly give a copy of your lecture for publication in our Indian Journal of International Law. We will be deeply honored, sir. We will be deeply honored. Transcript, and sir can modify that, and we'll be able to publish it in our journal. Events of this nature require a lot of hard work behind the scenes. My colleagues in the ISIL, Shri Vinay Singh, Dr. Anwar Sadar, Dr. Parneet Kaur, and Dr. Karnika Sharma, as also the administrative staff, make sincere efforts in ensuring these programs are successful and well attended. I profoundly thank them for their contribution. To conclude, I once again sincerely thank this distinguished assemblage at V.K. Krishna Menon Bhavan, faculty members, staff, and my dear students for their presence among us for successful holding of this lecture. We must all give a standing ovation to Justice Lalit, Honorable Justice Lalit. Thank you very much. My colleague.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you all for joining us for the 18th V.K. Krishna Memorial Lecture. I would welcome you all to join us for high tea on the second floor.